Hey there, everyone. Thanks for joining me for another video. Today, we are going to be discussing a few of my initial thoughts around the ingress of Jupiter into Aries. So I'm Cassandra. I don't know if I mentioned that already from CassandraTyndall.com. So thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. So let's get cracking. We'll start with the dates and details first. So next week, Jupiter will swim out of Pisces and move into Aries. And that's going to happen on May 10 and 11 here in Australia, where it will continue through Aries until around October 28. Then Jupiter will dip his toes back into Pisces until around the solstice, so December 20, thereabouts. And then Jupiter will push through Aries till May 16 in the US and other parts of the globe. And if you're down under, like I am here in Australia, where we're looking at around May 17. So a lot of people are thinking, what's this going to bring? Obviously on paper, Jupiter in Pisces is a lovely transit, but I think a lot of people have been maybe a little bit disappointed, or perhaps it didn't kind of bring the bang for buck that you might expect from Jupiter being in a home sign. And I'll discuss a little bit about that in a minute. But first, for your own lives and for your own chart, the easiest way to start to get a little bit of an idea or some insight or some precursors to what you can expect with this upcoming transit is to consider your life and what you were doing and how things felt when Jupiter was last in Aries. So the time 12 years ago where Jupiter was last there, we're looking at around June to September of 2010. And again, from January to June 2011. So again, we had that sort of two-part series of Jupiter in Aries. And then the same happened again in 1999. Like feels like last century, because yes, it was. So February to June 99, and again from October 99 to 2000. So February 2000. So we actually welcomed this century under this kind of transit. So pop that in your pocket for now. Think about how your life was kind of, what directions were you moving in? How was your life expanding? What were you really taking action and mojo around in that part of life then? So when we think about the sign of Pisces, it can help to think about the seasons and the sun. So in the Northern Hemisphere, at least, it's not the case here in Australia, but when the sun is moving through Pisces, it's at the end of the zodiac, and it's also the end of that season of darkness. The sign of Pisces really represents that the end of the darkness, but also the return to light, but we're not there yet kind of thing. And then we have that burst of spring-like energy when the sun moves into Aries and sets that vernal or spring equinox. So when we think about Pisces, it's yin, it is internal, it's dark, it's a nighttime. It's also a water sign, so it is about feeling, it's about emotions, it's about the sort of parts of ourselves that not external, if you like. So Jupiter through Pisces has really been some kind of exploration or expansion of the internal world. And if you think about water, it is an element that gravity really takes a hold of. So it does tend to draw down. So, if I spilled my glass of water all over my desk, right, it's just going to kind of drip off it and fall to the floor. So in terms of the exuberance that Jupiter brings, the balance and the expansion and those growth, that growth potential, this season hasn't been something that you might feel like you've got something to show for it. And this brings me back to the idea that we use in fitness and what have you a lot, is that summer bodies are made in the winter. If you prefer a gardening analogy, if you think about it, flowers generally don't blossom in the winter. Obviously, there are some that do, like, don't get me wrong, but the work is done in this autumn and the winter. So you can, enjoy those spring blossoms when the sun moves into Aries and beyond. So I think it's important to also recognize that even though we've had Jupiter in a home sign, which on paper is promising, we also don't reap and sow in the same season. So there is a bit of a Saturn dynamic there. So when we move into Aries, we are moving into a Yang cardinal fire sign. So it's an engine starting type of energy coming through here. And so when we start to shift out of that stillness or that dormant winter, and we start to get the first hints of spring in the air. And so obviously in the Northern Hemisphere, that's what's happening for you now. The reverse is true here, although where I live, it's sort of spring all the time. But if you think about it, when the days start to grow just that little bit longer, there's more activity, you do more things, there's more movement. You'll see there's more agitation in nature as well. The birds are buzzing and, flying about, and you'll see that your garden really just starts to sort of take off, so to speak. And so the expansion and that growth that was done in the winter really starts to burst outwards. Okay, so this is what I really do anticipate for this particular transit of Jupiter in Aries. So Jupiter in Aries, it was a friend of mine that said, Jupiter in Pisces, it was a friend of mine that said to me, maybe this is the rest we don't really want, but we all really need. I know I began this year, I contracted COVID and I just had to do nothing for the first 2 weeks of this year. And which was really counterintuitive to what I really wanted. We're talking new year, new goals, what have you, but I was kind of forced to rest and reflect and to think about things and just ponder and wonder and dream. Just wasn't my time to take action, obviously getting sick, and then of course just what the sky was doing, because Jupiter had recently returned to Aries at that particular time. So the first sort of 5 months of this year really has been a little bit of a seed planting, a seed blossoming, or, sort of a gestational type of period where we can eventually start to expand upon that. So if you think about a seed that we plant into the ground, a lot happens underneath the surface before we see it actually, come out of the dirt, if you like. So what we are, I guess, invited or challenged to do now as Jupiter moves into Aries is to take all of those new awarenesses, all those dreams or imaginative things, or that sort of creative bubbling within, and go do something with it. Okay, to try and gain a bit of action or momentum or set fire to a dream. Okay. Otherwise, we're just staying in that sort of Pisces land where it's just dreams are just, pie in the sky wishes. There's you might remember that show from way back, The Castle, where the man would say, "Oh, tell him he's dreaming." That's kind of, that's nice. But with Jupiter in Aries, we've got that invitation to go and do something. So I think for some people that I've connected with, they've kind of been a little bit, the whole Venus, Jupiter, the Jupiter, Neptune, that was kind of nice, but it was a passing transit. I don't believe that to be so. Okay, so obviously I'm drawing a longer bow here, but next year we will have Saturn in Pisces. Okay, so that will be 2023. By the time we have 2025, we're going to have Saturn and the North Node conjoin at 26 degrees of Pisces, which is, give or take a degree or two, the same degree where we had Jupiter, Neptune and Jupiter, Venus in Pisces. So I guess the whole idea of this little talk today, my, sermon, according to Cass, is to Don't feel disappointed because Jupiter in Pisces is over. Use the fuel of Jupiter in Aries to kind of set your dreams on fire, to go and chase something that's meaningful to you, to take those dreams and turn them into action. And then with time, we're talking Saturn in Pisces. And then, of course, by the time we get to the end of Saturn in Pisces and it hits that North Node, we've got some groundedness, we've got some structure, we've got some scaffolding, like concretizing or manifesting a dream in some way. So coming back to 2022, yes, Jupiter in Aries is a dignity downgrade. That is true on paper. But this particular transit, this first iteration of Jupiter in Aries, I think is really good. And I'm going to tell you why. So I am kind of into the Egyptian terms, or sometimes known as the bounds. I do have a webinar on that on my website. And I think I've done a talk for that on Nightlight Astrology. So if you are connected to Nightlight Astrology as a student, you might be able to access that as well. Now, terms and bounds. So in a nutshell, it is basically another level of dignity where a planet in a sign has different levels of dignity depending on the degrees it is in. So in 2022, we will have Jupiter moving through Jupiter's terms when Jupiter is between 0 and 5 degrees of Aries. So it's kind of like this double Jupiter period, okay? And at the same time, Mars will be entering Aries and really just exploding that. That's going to be really great for power, for passion, for moving forward on something that you believe in, okay? There might be a little bit of recklessness or naivety involved with that dynamic, but hey, like nothing ever happens unless you have that kind of blindsided self-belief, confidence, I can do the thing. We are talking fire now. So it is a little bit of a throwback to 2019 when we had Jupiter in Sagittarius. So there is kind of a certain similarity here. And then, of course, once Jupiter hits 6 degrees, so between 6 and 11, Jupiter's looking to Venus for an extra level of dignity or guidance. Of course, Jupiter only gets to 8 in 2022. So, but, you know, the point being is that this year, Jupiter is got a sort of a semi-rulership or looking to benefics as a part of its tour. So point being, don't see, oh, Jupiter is no longer in its home sign, it's lost dignity, and therefore it's like not as good as it could or should be. Okay, so, you know, don't go in thinking that that is a bad thing. What I would really love to do is, hopefully I'm doing this for you, is taking that fire, that inspiration, that can-do attitude. I'm just deciding and I'm doing. It's a bit Nike. The dreams, the imagination, the creation, or those feelings, you know, go act on them, go act on a dream and go and make it happen. Okay, so that's my little rant on Jupiter in Aries. So next week, I'll probably take it through the signs and the houses for you, so you can get a little bit of a horoscope insight there. I mean, this is what I did for Jupiter in Pisces. So I'll put a little thingy up here on the screen where you can click on that and reflect on Jupiter in Pisces. And of course, we are going to have the third installment of Jupiter in Pisces. So it might help you to use that video to perhaps reflect on things and, you know, spend this next week, because Jupiter will be in Aries this time next week. Spend the next week just starting to reflect on the last several months and what can I do to push forward with a dream or something that's meaningful. So yeah, I think I've said it all. So if you like these kind of videos and you want to have more guidance with the moving sky, I'd love you to join me in the Golden Circle. So I'll pop a link in the show notes below there where you can have a look. It's available on an app now, which I'm super excited about. So you can listen to me while you're going on walks or driving in the car and all that good stuff. So you can get it on your phone, a device, or on your computer. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the next week, these kind of reflective ideas and what can you do to push forward to something meaningful. One other thing I think I will mention before I say goodbye is the new moon that we had in Aries on April 1. So this kind of really, I think, gave us a bit of inkling or an insight to the newness and the freshness that Jupiter's just going to come through and expand and explode on. So, think about to last month's new moon and, what happened around there for you, what little things were evoked or excited, or where did you take a little bit of action around? So, as you can probably tell, I am really looking forward to Jupiter in Aries. It's actually going to be my perfection planet coming up next month. And maybe it's just partially my excitement out of getting out of 2 Saturn perfections. So it's always a good thing. All right, then, everyone. I hope you have a great week leading into Jupiter in Aries, and I look forward to catching you in the next video.